It's a long way to Tipperary. It's a long way to go. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Farewell to Collooney, goodbye Ballisadaire. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart, you will kill your own dear brother. You will kill your gentle neighbor. You will kill your trusted friend. You will kill when I order. Our brother you will kill on a night of nameless terror, on a night that swells cold fists. 6 young men raise rifles to their shoulders, and they execute my order like this. You will kill your own dear brother. You will kill your gentle neighbor. You will kill your trusted friend. You will kill when I order. Ah, brother, you will kill. Take careful aim for the center. Pull your trigger and be damned. Let's end this mess already. Let our gun smoke fill the land. You will kill your own dear brother. You will kill your gentle neighbor. You will kill your dearest friend. You will kill when I order. Ah, brother, you will kill.
Curm fáilte rót ilig go leor leir ligaí, don éigean speisialta seo, don imimecht mísúil de word atá réalta gnocht mar chuid de chlór cumhnacán cuarla chun de ligaí gá bhíle is a bheith chathair, le tactiacht an run tuairisúireachta, cultúr, alín, gaeltachta, sport agus man. You're all very welcome to Sligo Central Library for this special edition of The Word, part of Sligo County Council's commemoration programme 2024, supported by the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sport and Media. For those watching online, you are also very welcome. It is our pleasure to host this special edition with Simone Hickey in conversation with Ronan McGreevy. There will be more beautiful music by Steve Wickham during the evening. We are delighted to have Cathaoirleach of Sligo County Council, Councillor Declan Bree, here with us this evening, and I'd like to introduce Cathaoirleach Councillor Bree to open the evening. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, fellow history enthusiasts,
It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this special edition of The Word here at Sligo Central Library as part of Sligo County Council's commemorative programme 24, which is supported by the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sports and Media. That's a mouthful. Tonight, we gather to celebrate not just our rich history, but also the remarkable individuals who continue to explore and illuminate it for us. As we embark on this journey of remembrance and reflection, it's essential to acknowledge the desires of our communities and individuals to delve deeper into our history. Marking significant centenaries and anniversaries allows us to honour those who come before us and to appreciate the stories that have shaped our present. This evening, we're privileged to have with us Simone Hickey, local historian whose passion for early 20th century Irish history, particularly the First War or Great War, is inspiring. Over 200,000 Irishmen served in the British Army, and some 30,000 of them never came home, left dead on the battlefields of Europe. They enlisted for a myriad of reasons, many out of economic necessity, others with a sense of adventure or a sense of duty. They joined the millions of young men of German, Russian, British, French, Serbian, Polish, Belgian, Czech, Slovak, Austrian, Hungarian, Turkish, Italian, American, African, Indian, and many other nationalities who died for their respective empires. We will all be home by Christmas. That was the common delusion of the soldiers of all the armies. And it goes without saying that they would all return victorious. However, they were to experience a terrible lesson in the trenches and killing fields of the Marne, Verdun, the Somme, in Tannenberg and Gallipoli. As Connolly pointed out, all these mountains of Irish dead, all these corpses mangled beyond recognition, all these arms, legs, eyes, ears, fingers, toes, hands, all these shivering, putrefying bodies and portions of bodies, once warm, living and tender parts of Irish men and youths, all these horrors in Flanders or the Gallipoli Peninsula, all are items in the price Ireland pays for being part of the British Empire. In all, over 8.5 million young men from all countries died in the brutal slaughter of that terrible war. And it's right that those young men who died in that dreadful conflict should be remembered. And Simone Hickey, through her efforts, allows this and future generations to remember them. Simone's book, Bringing Them Home, Sligo's Great War Dead 1914-1918, is a testament to her dedication to uncovering and sharing the narratives of those who've served and sacrificed during this tumultuous period. Simone's involvement in the Let Sligo Forget campaign, including the Armistice Day Memorial Walk in 2018, and the creation of the Great War Memorial Garden in Cleaver Regional Park for the over 600 men and women from County Sligo who lost their lives in that war, highlights her commitment to ensuring that these stories are not forgotten. Tonight, Simone will engage in a conversation with the esteemed Ronan McGreevy, author and journalist with the Irish Times. And their discussion will revolve around Simone's forthcoming, or not forthcoming, it's hot off the press. It will revolve around Simone's book, which promises to shed light on the lives and the legacies of those from our county who gave their all during that great war. And as we delve into these narratives of loss, courage and resilience, we are reminded of the profound significance of honouring our history, of cherishing the memories of those who came before us, and of recognising the sacrifices many of them made. Through the pages of Simone's book and the dialogue that will unfold before us, we will be presented with an opportunity to connect with our past, to learn from it, and to ensure that the stories of those who died are not lost to time, but are instead remembered and preserved for generations to come. We are also fortunate to have the talented Steve Wickham perform for us this evening. Music, like history, has the power to connect us, evoke emotions, and inspire reflection. We look forward to enjoying his performance as part of our gathering. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank County Librarian Donald Tinney, Senior Executive Librarian Patricia Keane, and dedicated staff of Sligo County Library. Your unwavering support for the commemorative programme and commitment to fostering a love for history and culture in our community is commendable. Thank you for being here this evening, and I hope you find inspiration in the conversations to come. Cúra míle maith.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cathaoirleach Bree, staff of Sligo County Libraries, friends, I'm deeply honoured to be here. As Councillor Bree said, my name is Ronan McGreevy. I am an Irish Times journalist, but for the purposes of a conversation tonight, I'm also a First World War historian. I wrote a book in 2016 entitled Wherever the Firing Line Extends, Ireland and the Western Front, which is a sort of tour guide to the Western Front. I give guided tours to the Western Front, and next week I am publishing a book with a colleague from the National University of Ireland, Dr. Emer Purcell, on the students of the National University of Ireland who fought in the First World War. Just as importantly, I'm from Leitrim, Carrick-on-Shannon to be precise, so I'm a neighbour of yours, and Sligo is a place that's very dear to me. As a child, we visited Strand Hill and Ross's Point, Markovich House, and I got married in Markery Castle. And I know you have WB Yates, but we always maintain in Leitrim that the Lake Isle of Innisfree is ours. I'm delighted to be able to launch Simone's book, Bringing Them Home, on the Sligo War Dead of the First World War. And I'm also flattered to be in the company of one of Ireland's finest musicians, Steve Wickham, who has transformed our understanding of what the fiddle is capable of being. Simone's book is a wonderful act of remembrance, but as importantly is a work of scholarship which will be a reference point for future generations of historians. I'm constantly gratified by the efforts of so many people like Simone, who have gone to great ends to confront what F.X. Martin accurately described in the 1960s as the national amnesia in Ireland over what happened in the Great War. And I know Simone makes many references to that in the book. Remembering the First World War dead of our country is not about the money, nor the fame, nor the recognition. It's about the satisfaction of what Samuel Beckett once described as putting a stain on the silence. If I might add one more quote, this one from a Canadian First World War historian who told me, you can't be just a little bit interested in the First World War. It becomes an all-consuming passion for so many people in terms of its terribleness and the waste of life and its seminal impact on our understanding of the world we live in. It is unsurpassed in its interests. The Great War was the largest war that the Irish were ever involved in. For it to be written out of our national history for so long is not only deeply ahistorical, it's also absurd. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the work of another stalwart of the Irish First World War remembrance, Tom Burnell, who has published a 6-volume series on the Irish from the 26 counties who died in that war, just from the 26 counties. His figure now is 33,163, of whom 716 he lists were from Sligo. This is up to August 1921. When you consider that the ratio of fatalities between North and South, between the 26 and the 6 counties, was 2-to-1, you're probably looking at the best part of 50,000 Irishmen who died in the First World War. I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge one of the greatest journalists of his generation, Tommy Gorman, who died earlier this year, who's a huge loss and whose deep love of Sligo was apparent to everything he did. It's a shame he wasn't here today, but I know he's here in spirit. So on that note, Simone, let's start with yourself. Just tell us a little bit about yourself before you started this project in 2011.
I'm just a regular person, married to Tom, 2 children, Alicia and Zachary, and now I'm a proud grandmother of Isaiah and Ezra. And I was working in a primary school. I was a Montessori teacher, and then I was working in a primary school, special needs assistant, which I continue today. And I decided to go. I always wanted to go back to college, and Dr. Niamh Plunkett set up a program in St. Angela's College for mature students like myself, and I'm forever grateful to her for it, because it set me on this path and brought all these men home. And it was the Diploma in Folklore History. And it was during that time when I had to do trace my family tree and write about 2 interesting people. So I wrote about my dad's father, Bernie. He played with the Blues, not Sligo Rovers, and he had Wolverhampton Rovers, and I think it was Millwall. Dad would probably correct me. He had trials there. He had an interesting life, and we had him until he was nearly 98. So then I said, I better balance the books and look for Mum's side, and I asked her, anything interesting? No. And her dad worked as a printer compositor in the Sligo Champion, and she said, and I said, and his dad, we never hear about him. And she says, oh, he died in the war. And I said, sorry? And she said, he died in the war. And I said, what war? And she said, the First World War. I'm nearly sure he did. Yeah, ask. And of course, Granda was dead. And this was 2012. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't believe that I was a couple of minutes, 2 minutes walk to Granny's house, and we were down there all the time. And my mum's paternal grandfather had died in the war, but her maternal grandfather was living in the house with them. Mm-hmm. So she had so much love for one grandfather, but didn't know about the other one. So I decided to write about him, but nobody knew about him. So I went up to King House in Royal and talked to Paul Malpas and joined the Connacht Rangers, and they did a search for me. And I found out he died on the first day of the Spring Offensive, 21st of March 1918. So I went on, graduated, and then I was fortunate enough to go on to the master's program, historical studies. And when it came to choosing an assignment for 20th century, I said, oh, I don't know anything. And then it hit me, Grandad, great-granddad, you know, maybe I'll try something like that. So I wrote my assignment, about 5,000 words or something like that. And Dr. John O'Callaghan encouraged me then, and he said, there's your thesis, you could do your thesis on that. And that's what I did. So I started researching in February 2014, began, and then it all came to light in Sligo with news from the past, and people started to give in more names, because there was never there was always an approximate number. There was never a really definite number from Sligo. It went from 426 to 390 to 396. So I said, something must be, we have to find out more. So News from the Past was set up here by the library, Mr. Donald Tenney, and with Hugh Traer, and local man Brian Scanlon was collecting names, and they put them all together and came up with a list with just under 550. So as I was starting my academic program, I had to actually physically research them methodically and find out, were they from Sligo? Were there any duplicates? Were any of the survivors, etc.? So I discounted maybe 30 or 40 of those because of the duplicates. I'll just give you one example. There's a Thomas Callahan, number 4 Barrack Street, in the Royal Artillery, 5283. There's a Thomas Callahan, number 6 Barrack Street, in the Royal Artillery, 5283. Mm-hmm. So 1 digit. So then you have to go digging to see, is it a duplicate, etc. So, and then there was another one was William Johnston, and he was from Mullaghmore, and the Commonwealth Graves Commission printed out his certificate, etc. And it said William Johnston, son of Lancelot, Mullaghmore, Sligo. So then to find out further, I went into the census. There was no William Johnston, Mullaghmore, etc. And then I said, I'll check on Lancelot and William weren't from Mullaghmore and Sligo, they were from Mullaghmore and Fermanagh. So that's how you have to double check, triple check, to make sure you get the right man. You don't leave anyone out, but you don't include somebody that isn't, I don't mean worthy, but it doesn't belong, that there are mistakes in. That's why you have to be so meticulous.
I think what was regarded as so far as it could be the definitive guide to the Irish War did was the Irish National War Memorial Records, which were published in 1922, and they list over 49,400 names. But that's flawed for a number of reasons. One of which is that a lot of men who would have fought in Irish regiments, like say for instance Lieutenant John Kipling, just to give one example, would have been included as Irish, but they weren't actually Irish. Whereas a lot of people, a lot of men who were Irish were left out of it, and that's understandable in the context of the time when you're dealing with so many.
There were also a lot of spellings, misspelt names, and for instance, great granddad Terence Rooney, they say born in Calmy, Calmy, instead of Calry. So it was just whoever was typing up pressed the M instead of the R. So little tiny things like that. But the Irish War Records, Harry Clark's designs they're incredible on it. They're beautiful. But they have 390 listed. At the moment, we're up on 678. Sligo man.
I think this is part of a pattern. I think as well, and like in Leitrim, where I'm from, I think Pádraig Griffin did the same thing. It was 240 in the
Memorial,
the Memorial Records, and it's like, I think it's over 350 now, which goes to show you that the actual impact of the First World War, we still haven't got to the bottom of it.
No.
Tom Burnell, when he started his book back in 2015, he had over 29,000. Now he's up to 33. So you just don't know where it all ends.
Well, our men, they only about 338 have actual graves.
I know.
The rest are on panels all around the place, and they're in 23 different countries around the world, as far away as Burma, Myanmar now, and Pakistan, India, Cape Town, Kenya. A lot died from disease as well, and we have 10 who received the Civil War badge, and they were discharged, and they wore their badge. And they wore this badge, so if they were in town, people would look at them and say, well, why aren't you at the war? You know, there was a lot of animosity there, people who didn't go at the time, and it was their way of saying, honourable discharge. But those men died within a couple of years. Yeah. Tuberculosis, influenza. It's just, what got me was, why forget about them? Not even, forget, fair enough. If you don't know somebody, you can't remember them. But it's the acknowledgement that they existed.
Yes.
It's the acknowledgement that boys went off and men went off and left their family and didn't come home, and people didn't grieve, and you have to grieve. It's part of the process. We all have to grieve. Yeah. We all have to say goodbye to somebody. And we all do it in different ways. But that was an era when people went to church or went to Mass, and they had prayers and novenas said, and they had anniversary masses, memorials in the paper, etc. And they went to a grave and left something on a grave. But if you don't have a grave, if you can't mention somebody's name, that hurt stays, and it stays with families throughout the decades. And I mean, we had huge losses. We've had 33 sets of brothers. I know.
I mean, your book is absolutely heartbreaking. It really is. I mean, I've seen it myself. There was a woman I worked with in the Irish Times. Her name is Rachel Collins. Her great-grandfather survived the war. There was 6 brothers. 5 of them were killed. Now, you have 2 sets of brothers. I think it's the Conlons, isn't it?
Yeah, eight Conlons went and 4 did not return. The Campbells, 5.
Yes.
And the O'Connors, 4 didn't return. 1.
Isn't it just extraordinary that? And I think you said, just tell us first of all, right, about the Conlon family, because they're probably the most famous family from Sligo in terms of the grief.
All the men are mentioned there, but I don't write about them because they've been written about in several other books. So I focused on different families. Yes. But all the Conlons went. I cannot find any information on John, but he's included in the book because contemporary papers and the family, and they, know better than anyone else that they all went. And Michael was brought home because 4 of the brothers, including Alex, who's in the book, I have his poem in the book. And it was just horrific. If you start from very early on, Geoffrey Fenton, who was from just up there in Ohamore, his dad was a justice of the peace, etc. Went to Sandringham, the rest, the military school. He died on the 20th of September 1914, but on the 9th, his father-in-law, Colonel Tresor, was killed. So that woman lost her father and her husband within the space of 11 days. And that was the first sort of grouping of a death. Move on then to February and March in 1915, and you have the Wood Martins. And there's 3 weeks between them. And then you move on and you go into the Gordon family. It was tragic.
Yeah, let's talk about those because this is a really, really extraordinary story. There's 3 of them. There's a father and 2 sons. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about them.
The Gordons were from Leitrim.
Yes,
moved in
and
moved to Sligo Barrack Street, which is just directly behind this building. And as my great-grandfather was from as well, and the Conlons. Frank tried to join up. Actually, he did join the army, Frank Jr. Francis was the dad. And he was discharged, bad eyesight. Yeah. So he was discharged. But the minute war broke up, he was recalled and sent off. So he was sent off, and he died in August 1915. And while he was going, the dad and the younger brother, John, decided they would enlist. And they were on the same boat, in the same battalion, the Connacht Rangers, heading to Gallipoli in August, when they found out that Frank had died. And then come December, Francis Sr. died.
That's in Costarino. That's in it's in the mountains in Salonika, yeah.
And then the following year, John was in Egypt and contracted malaria, and he was sent home, and he got the SWB, the Silver War badge, and he was dead by 1918. And then there's more of that story, in the book.
And
the rest of the family.
There was 10 children, isn't that right?
10 children,
Francis had 10. Yeah. So his widow's left with
no husband and 2 children. And 2 of the other children then died of whatever, and one was sent to an industrial. It's terrible. And then you have the Scanlon brothers.
Yeah.
They're in the book as well. And we're talking about the memorial records. Bernard is listed as having been born in Belfast, which he was.
Yeah.
So he's not a Sligo person according to the records. But it's because his dad was a master tailor in Henry Lyons, which is still in operation today. Yeah. It's a great store here in Sligo. And they were tailors. And according to the records and the census, when you go back to the census, all the family came from Sligo except Bernard. So there must have been a year, or they may have been away when he was born. But he died on the 1st of July, first day of the Battle of the Somme, and then his brother, the end of the Somme. And that first day as well, Mick Lowry, and he was from Ross's Point. His mother was Gillen from Ross's Point, and his dad was a seafarer, a seaman. Yeah. So in the 1901 census, they had moved over. They were miners. By 1911, all the family, including his younger brother, Alex, a 14-year-old, were underground in the mines. So Mick married Elizabeth McKeown, and himself and Elizabeth's brother James enlisted. They were in Durham at the time, and both of them. So that lady lost her brother and her husband on the same day, first battle of the day of the Battle of the Somme.
It's extraordinary the level of grief that this war, the legacy of this war left. I mean, at one stage, I think it's Willie Redmond's son, Major Redmond. He said that there was nearly 250,000 children in Ireland at that time that had been affected by the war, had lost a parent or a grandparent or an uncle or whatever. Yeah.
We have 135 men that were married, and 105 of them had children. But out of those 135, 33 women remarried. Yeah. Because when the 100 Act was released, and we had the documents there in 1922 to look at the pensions, it was remarried, remarried, remarried. And that's one of the reasons it's very important. It took so long to do this because I wanted to wait until all the records were out. So when you did look at a pension, you knew exactly where his wife was at the time. You knew exactly, because 1911 was the last sort of main record we had with the census. So when you look at that, then you can see his wife, how many children he had, you know, how the pension was going, etc.
And you were able to access those records online, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think the digitization of archives has been like an absolute game changer for our transforming our understanding of so many events like this, for instance. Whereas, you know, previously you would have struggled to do this book 25 years ago, pre-internet.
I struggled to do it in 2015 because because we didn't have those records. But holding back all those years to do it, it means that now I have birth certs for them, so I know the mother's maiden name. Now I have a marriage certificate, so I know if they were married. And now I have a pension record for the children. So if anyone out there is looking for any information, they'll say, "Oh, I knew John Rutland. Maybe he's something to me." But if they go into it and say, "Oh yeah, Granny did her maiden name," the more information you have, the closer you are to getting relatives, to recognise them again.
It is extraordinary. And one of the things that Tom Burnell has done in his book, he has an archive online. He put his entire research online, so you can search names as well. And I think it's a great way of bringing these people back to life, because you know, at that time, a lot of them would have written letters, and those letters are kept. So we know a lot about. We know an awful lot about a lot of these men. Not all of them, but we do know quite a lot about, especially the ones who died.
The Wood Martins kindly let me read one of the letters James sent back for Christmas Day when they were playing football, the truce. Because it wasn't just one game, it went along different sections along the lines of the trenches. But it's not just the immediate family that were connected. All those men, their trades, we lost trades over it. Big houses were lost because there was no air. Farms were lost. I found in the initial search for the thesis that the majority of men came from County Sligo rather than the town. Now, if you asked anybody a couple of years ago or even now, why did they go? It would be mainly economic reasons. Money, money, money. But my research, because the thesis was entitled Social Profile and Motivation, and my conclusion was pressure.
Yes, and I'll come along to that in a second. It is interesting because you think, why would anybody sign up for a war? But you see it in Russia at the moment, whereby the Russian government is going into very poor parts of Russia and offering people basically a bounty to get killed. But I suppose the principal motivation for you writing this book is the fate of your great-grandfather, Terence Rooney. And you talked about pressure and so on. I mean, this man was not young by the standards of the time. He's 36. He had 6 children. He had a good job as a printer, compositor in the Sligo Champion, good steady job. And yeah, he signed up to fight. It does seem extraordinary.
Because he moved from the Champion to the Independent. The Independent was a Tory paper run by the Conservative, you know. So they were sort of, everything in it, all their advertisements, etc., were at the end of it, join today, God save the King. Whereas the Champion was nationalist, it was Save Ireland. So because we had 7 printers die, I believe, or it's my assumption, that he was part of a PALS platoon, that they got together. We had 17 tailors that died. I mean, master tailors that joined up and went from Sligo.
Wow.
We have a lovely roll of honour in Richard Lyon's office there in Henry Lyon's company. There were 2 created, and the other one was Pollexfen's Mills out in Ballasadair. But we just lost so much. It's the fact that they couldn't mourn. It's the fact that you couldn't talk about somebody. And they didn't exist. That's what just, I mean, we all love our parents, our grandparents. It's just, it's wrong that people are just swept aside because it didn't suit the politics of the day.
I think one of the things that I've found out in my own research was that they weren't forgotten in the immediate aftermath of the First World War, because they couldn't be, because there's so many of them. I mean, by my calculations, if you add up the number of Irish, not just in the British Armed Forces, but also in the Canadian, there's nearly 20,000 in the Canadians, the Australians, the New Zealanders and the Americans. You're looking at 270,000 men from Ireland, right? As I said, you're looking at best part of 50,000 who were killed. You can't ignore that level of. I mean, it's more than 1% of the overall population of Ireland was killed in the war. That's 1 man in 50. And I go home to Carrick and I say to people, I said, 1 man in 50 doesn't sound like a lot. It's actually, in a town the size of Carrick, which is 80, it's equivalent of 40 men being killed. It's like losing the intermediate, junior and senior teams in the space of 4 years, because that's the age profile. You can imagine the impact that has on people, and then people they forget about it. I think the amnesia really sets in after the Second World War, and it's then that it just becomes something that's kind of forgotten about.
It probably started maybe like with Devil Era in 32, maybe. You know, and that's when we had the great comrades of the Great War.
Yeah.
And there was a great committee in Sligo helping veterans and their families. And then it was changed to the Royal British Legion, which wasn't the best name to change it to. You know, if you were trying to receive any sort of aid from them, it was frowned upon. But I mean, without the British Legion at the time and the pension coming in, a lot of people wouldn't have survived. You know, as my dad said, he'd say that you'd know the people who the Legion were helping because they would have proper shoes. They wouldn't be like them with holes in their shoes. You know, they would get the bag of coal come the winter time.
And they'd have presumably there's also the sort of the houses,
well, we only have one set of those in Sligo, RD
right?
Terrace, the veterans' houses. But what they did do, and I know for our family, the Rooneys, when Terrence died, when the boys reached a certain age, they could go to secondary school or take a trade, and all 4 of them went into the Champion, Sligo Champion, as printer compositors.
Yeah, it's amazing, and you've had since. I mean, your work has been helped by the Great War Walk in
the Armistice,
the Armistice Walk in 2018. Tell us about your involvement in that and what that meant to what you were trying to do.
Well, I was busy researching the men, and from August 14, I decided I'd post about them. Just 100 years ago today, this man died, etc. And then my good friend Malcolm took an interest, Malcolm Hamilton. Playwright, author, just actor, just a good man. And he had this fabulous idea. He said, why don't we do something for Armistice? We have a full year ahead. This was about October 17. And he said, we'll parade through the town or something like that. So over a couple of meetings, sitting in Kate's kitchen, having lovely coffee, we were chatting about it. And then he brought Niall Henry, Blue Raincoats Theatre, and got together, and they decided we'll do something sort of, but it won't be a parade or it won't be a march or anything. It'll be a solemn return into Sligo. So a committee was set up, chaired by Jackie Lynch, and Malcolm got to work, and Niall, and I must say it was one of the most proudest days ever because it was spectacular. It was so respectful and solemn, and we all lined up, and we had fabulous help from the county council, and of course the decade of centenaries, the library, everybody came on board. The traffic was stopped, the one-way system. The Ugly and Heron came out and escorted us either side and showed us how to walk. And Maura Lug from Dark Dorto Productions provided all the costumes, etc. So we all got together and we started, and we walked up to Wine Street. And Armistice was at 11 o'clock on the 11th of the 11th, 2018. but we didn't move. And then at 11 minutes past 11, all the bells in County Sligo, the churches, oh, goosebumps, rang out. And then we just walked. There was silence the whole way. And the streets were crowded. Malcolm's here, so great job. It was very, very, very moving. It really was. And we all just walked silently up. My dad walked, and 80. He took the name of a civilian. Everybody had a name. Nobody wore any medallion, medals or poppies or anything. They just wore the costume of the day, and they were given the name of the person they were walking with inside the pocket. So they walked with them. They brought them home. They walked through the streets, and that was part one. That was how they did it spiritually. They all walked into Sligo, and the crowds then just walked behind them, and we went up to the cenotaph. And Niall had arranged people to read some of the letters that I had just researched and some of the wills. And then we dispersed, and that was it over. But it was just
And then you
incredible.
have, following on from that, you have the beautiful memorial as well, which was
Yeah.
in what year? Was it last year?
It was last year.
Yeah, yeah.
And our guest speaker was the late Tommy Gorman, a
Yeah.
great friend of ours. And we set a committee there, and I had 5 Mr. Men, I call them. Mr. Negotiator, Tommy Higgins, is down there. Mr. IT, that's Malcolm. Mr. Finance is Richard Lyons. Mr. Art, Mr. Design, that's David Lawler. And Mr. Communications would be Michael Kirby. And those 5 men, I don't really know what to say about them. They're just incredible. They organised all that. The meetings they had to sit through, and I was Mr. My Men, because all I had to worry about was my men.
Yeah, yeah.
And making sure those men were etched properly in the proper stones, etc. And they did all the groundwork and the hard work. And
So-
it went on because all the names were etched in 2019, and of course we had COVID and everything, and in between that there was change this, we need Osgraelga, this Osgraelga, we need this, and saints, those 5 men.
And I suppose in many ways this book is kind of the third
Culmination,
part.
it's the journey.
Yeah.
There was 3 parts to the journey. It was
So-
spiritually,
Great.
and then it was in concrete. So no matter who passes by, our architect, David Lawler, Mr. Design, did the most beautiful, simple, but tasteful design of a garden. From the outset, I didn't want any mention of military on it. I know we had to have the Great War Memorial Garden, but once you walked into the stand-in stones, they were just men in townlands.
Yeah.
No majors, no privates, everybody was equal. The focus was on the men and bringing them home as men. They were left as just regular men, the majority of them. So I didn't want any politics, any religion, any iconography or, symbolism of war there. So it was just, and from the overhead, looking down, we had a drone. Joe Hunt did a fabulous video of the drone. Looking down, it's in the shape of 2 St. Bridget's crosses, which is a really old Celtic symbol as well. Life, birth, life, death, resurrection or reincarnation. It's the circle of life. And the way they're situated as well, because they're off-centre, as David said, you walk up to one. It's so easy to turn. You don't have to, it just... I was up with them this morning. I sat down and chatted to them. And there are 4 lovely concrete stools. It's lovely. And where it's situated, Kieran Hayes chose the perfect site because it's just in our new recreational park. So when you go in, you look over and you see it in just the side of the road. And it draws you into it, and it creates dialogue. And little children run, what is this? What's this about? Because it's not in your face. There's no Tommy, or there's just no symbolism. It's just, as you can see on the front of the book, it's just regular stone, granite stone, and they're just
I haven't
absolutely,
seen it yet. You have some mementos here. Tell us a little bit about these.
World War I medals, I always call it the Great War. I think out of respect
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the men.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
World War One only came into being in 1939. About they just, but all the symbolism, all the contemporary papers, everybody refers to the Great War. And when doing the book, I don't have any heroes or traitors or anything like that in it. It's just basically about the boys. But this is Thomas Gettins, and he was from Millcoach Road. Now, every woman, if you died, you were given this with a big certificate. And this is
No, it was the death penny, wasn't
the death
it?
penny,
Yeah.
the memorial plaque, but everybody's name is on it in the corner. So you can't change it. So they're quite heavy. So
Really?
I acquired that last year. They're very hard to get. Somebody rang me up and said, "Oh, you're interested in Sligo." And I've always wanted a set of medals. So my husband there very kindly a few years ago bought me these. Now they're 3 different Irishmen. It's not belonged to the same man, but Thomas would have had these because he died in 1915. So he would have had the 1914-15 star.
It's the Monstar.
That's the
so
Monstar.
that was given to regular soldiers, wasn't it, who
Yeah.
had been in the British Army beforehand, so they would have
was-
fought at Mons
yeah.
in 1920.
And if you served in 1914, you got the 14th star.
Yeah.
And then, well, you would have had to be killed. We had 42 killed in 1914 in those little few months. And then you have the British War Medal and the Victory Medal. And they were the thing, and that was for dress wear. And they would say on armistice or whatever, anybody who did survive would wear them. Now, I don't. You only wear them here if you've earned them.
Yeah.
On that side, and then for if you're in town or not in town, but if you're going somewhere else, say to an evening function that they're too heavy, you'd wear the bar, just the bar.
Sure.
So Thomas would have gotten those. He was a tailor, but he was also a reservist. So, and he signed up in 1909 to the reserve, like the FCA, I suppose, years ago. And this guy over here, I only acquired these this year. And as you can, they're very heavy. There's a hole right through that. They must have had it up in the wall. That's Joseph Riley, Armstrong's Row.
Wow.
And he was a baker, and his dad was a baker. And he died in July 1917. So he didn't get a star because he wasn't there. So they're his 2 medals now. So my good friend Oliver Breen in Enniskillen, who collects medals, he mounted them for me because they were all so. Come Cenotaph on Armistice next on the 10th when we have ours. I'll have them up there. So they're so rare to get medals that are still together, because if there was a family and you had
of
siblings,
course, yeah.
one medal went here and one went the other way and somebody else. Like we don't have Grandis medals.
Sure.
But all the men's names are engraved. So that's why if you're ever watching Antiques Roadshow or Flog It or something, when you're looking at the medals, there's a story behind it because the man's name is engraved on it and his number. So they're very... I'm extremely happy I got those. They'll never leave Sligo again. They came from Dorset. I had got them sent over.
Good.
So they're back in Sligo again.
Glad to hear it.
And these are just, I got one in Flanders, in Ypres. That's in a Skilling Fusiliers.
Yeah, wow, yeah.
Yeah, Grand Deterrence is listed as being a Royal Inniskillen Fusilier. Yet he signed up with the Connacht Rangers. And the problem back then is when you went to war, if your battalion was decimated, you amalgamated with the next one. And then when that was decimated, you were given into it, and he ended. That was his Connacht. That was a Connacht Rangers one, an original one.
Well,
That was a cap badge.
Yeah. And you talked about half them not having a known grave. If you ever go to the Western Front, you'll see graves that say an unknown soldier, known unto God or whatever. Then you'll see an unknown soldier of the Connacht Rangers or wherever. That's because they would have found one of these, but they wouldn't be able to identify the individual involved. So it'll be that's it. Before I opened it to the floor, you said you're always asked why you wear the shamrock poppy. So before, rather than preempt a question, I'll ask you myself, why do you wear the shamrock poppy?
Well, long before the Great War, there were several wars in Europe, Napoleonic wars all over France. And when thousands of men were killed, etc., the poppy would grow again. It's a sign of life. People looked on it, and it all started over with McRae with his In Flanders Fields, and a lady called Moira Michael in the States. And she was really moved by it. She actually wrote her a poem as well, but she made one and she wore it out of respect for, in America. It came from America. And then 1923, the British Legion took it over. So when I wear the poppy, it's for my men. It's for those 100. It's for the men, because as you know, when you go to the Flanders, you're in a railway track. The poppies grow up.
Yeah,
so it's like every summertime, it's like thousands of men who are under the roads, who are under the houses, the shopping centres, because they're all over the place. It's like their spirits coming back up, just saying, I'm here. You know, I'm still here. Just remember me. So to me, it signifies the loss, but those thousands, like in Poisier, where Granda, it's only it's just 5 minutes from Thiepval, but it's just a wall he's on. He's blown to bits all over the place, as are hundreds of thousands of others. So, out of respect, it's like a cemetery when you go through there, even though there are little white cemeteries all over the place. But you're even on the road. There are bodies. There are people underneath you. So when you see those poppies coming up, it's like thousands of soldiers. It's just a sense of hope that, no more war, but it doesn't. So it's not, at the moment, it seems to be every war, in Britain has a poppy. I'm just for my men there.
Yeah, it's a shame it's become so politicised in so many ways. It shouldn't be.
That's why it's nice to have the Irish one.
Yes.
And this one I was given, Chris Islip, another friend of ours, he was over in the summer, and he was involved in the big memorial in Washington, the new installation, the big bronze one, life-size one. So he was on the committee for that, and this is the doughboy one from the States. So that's why he's probably watching. I said I'd wear it.
Okay. We have some time for some questions, but we have about 10 minutes or so. Is there anybody? We have a roving microphone. Is there anybody have any questions? If you wouldn't mind giving us your name and your question. This gentleman over here.
Sean Cunningham. The time you were talking about your grandfather there, the spring offensive around the March of 1918.
18, yeah.
Yeah, at that time, the Irish Brigade, the Irish Division at that time was split up. It was dissolved because they made the excuse, the British Army, that there wasn't enough soldiers to keep it going. But they were fighting at the same time with the 36th Ulster, and they were of a similar situation as well, but they were allowed to continue. And I believe that the reason, I could be wrong, I believe that the reason was that they allowed the Ulsters to continue is that when the war was over, that they were able to go to Belfast and march through Belfast in triumphalism. And the reason why that they didn't allow the Irish is because they didn't want Irish men marching through Dublin armed. And I believe that, do you think that they should be allowed now march to commemorate them, to bring them home? And is Ireland ready for something like that now? Or do you think that that'd be a step too far? But at the same time, should the English recognise the disrespect they showed these men who fought in the World War, where they had to come back and just put their hands in their pockets and get on with life? And they weren't shown any respect of what they did for the Second World War. That's just.
Well, I didn't know that. I hadn't heard that before, that the Irish weren't allowed, because Granda was with the Connacht Rangers, and as I said, after Passchendaele in 17, his battalion was decimated, and he was brought into the Enniskillen Fusiliers, and they fought right through. I have men from right through to the end of up to Armistice, Irish brigades that fought. But as regards marching through, I go to Island Bridge on Commemoration Day in Dublin, and I really enjoy going there because everybody is together. There's a tricolour and there's a British flag, and we stand up and we sing Aura Naveen. And everybody, including, and I was standing beside Oliver Breen, my friend from Enniskillen, and he says, them bucks there were walking in the Orange March last week, and isn't it wonderful? They're standing up with us for our... So I think, if anything, everybody realises that everybody was involved in this war. And we all should be respected, regardless. That's why there's nothing to do with politics or religion in the book. What I'm saying is, I don't remember the men from where they came from, their social status or anything. I talk about the men as people, as family members, as sons and as brothers. And I think even disregarding the British respect and everything, we have to respect them first. We have to bring them home. We have to say, thank you for doing what you believed in. Because at that time, it was socially acceptable to go, and morally, and politically, and the religious were behind them. There was so much pressure on them. I have a newspaper clipping from the contemporary newspapers, and that's what's great about the library. All the papers of the day are available to everybody. And it's recruiting in the West, it was called, the little article. And Lestrange and his cars set up a facility so men could be brought up to King House to enlist in 1914. And Bishop Coyne put his cars at the disposal for that use. So he was advocating the war. He was giving his cars so men could be brought up, because King House was the only place you could enlist. We didn't get our own recruitment office until Murphy moved from Boyle, Colonel Murphy, to the Victoria Hotel in 1918. So men had to either go to Enniskillen, to the castle, or they had to go to King House. So 900 people within the space of the end of August to February 1950, when the article was written, 900 men went up to enlist, using the cars belonging to the bishop. So that's just one little thing put in. I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm just saying every bit of it has to be shown. The religious side, the political side, you either went for Carson or you went with Redmond. You know, there was a lot of, then there was penury. You either take the shilling or you face emigration. You either face your fears and go and fight, or face the dread of your family like a white feather. So there was it was a dichotomous situation, and people were just, the pressure was huge. And you have to realise that there wasn't a lot of, I'm talking too much now, haven't I? DORA was introduced in August. 2 days after the war broke out, they introduced DORA, the Defence of the Realm Act. And that was just censorship, straight down. So every song, every poem, every advertisement for sugar had to have pro-war in it. And if you were caught with any anti-war posters, you could be fined up to £100, which was huge, or imprisoned. And by 1915, when they needed people from Britain to come, because they were losing men all over the place, people were just dying, the war wasn't over, they turned to Ireland, the neighbour. We need men. So they changed all the symbolism. All of a sudden, there was no king sitting on the poster. There was St. Patrick. Will you know, son, it's your time to go. And a burning church in the background. There were wolfhounds. There was Irish colleens. It was all aimed towards Ireland. All the iconography, all the symbolism was all changed because the new committee, CCORI, it's the Central Committee of Recruiting in Ireland, was set up February 1915, and they changed everything. It was just, so you're walking down the street, you're not, literacy was becoming more prevalent, you know, that people were learning to read and write. So you're walking down the street, there's no TV, there's no radio. There was the odd picture house. So you found your information from people on the street, and you listened to the people who were, how do I say, better than you, more educated, because they're the ones who know the justice of the peace, the priests, the reverends, the doctors, the justice. You know, you listen to the people who are educated because they know, and they were telling you to go. And then you look down, you see these beautiful, colourful posters stuck all over. It's great. And there's one there of a man, his hand out. Your pal needs you. So, I mean, the sense of it was coercion. It was a form of blackmail. The mind all the time, everything. You pick up a packet of sugar and there's a manhill. There's Summit Flour is a great one. He's using the Summit bags of the flour as trench bags for sand. I mean, it was just, they were bombarded and they had no chance, the young guys. You need to be a very strong person to stand up against that. So.
Any other questions? Anyone else? Speak now or forever hold your breath. Anyone? Just in relation to the 16th Irish Division that the gentleman there mentioned, your great-grandfather was killed on the 21st of March 1918. That was the first day of the German Spring Offensive. The 16th Irish Division was completely destroyed in that, what was left of it was completely destroyed in that assault. It was the second worst day for Irish. It was the second bloodiest day for Irish men in the First World War, other than the first day of the Battle of the Somme. And the 16th Irish Division, I think, was simply just the regiments were given to places like I think the Royal Navy Division and stuff like that. They were just, I had not heard of it as being a political thing, but actually, actually,
interesting.
The 16th, by that stage, the 16th Irish Division was overwhelmingly non-Irish because they couldn't find any more Irish recruits for it, you know. So, yeah. Anybody else?
It was the first time ever in Ireland everybody was together on the same page. The only time in Ireland, every single body, be it everybody, against conscription. They had outside churches, outside chapels or service halls or whatever. They had little forms, anti-conscription pledge.
Well, the conscription was brought in as a result of the German Spring Offensive of 1918. I mean, the British were absolutely, I mean, that was the closest they came to losing the war, the British and the French. And so I think they bring it in March. There's a huge backlash against it in Ireland. But by the time the British come around to implement it, they've stopped the Germans, they've pushed them back, and it was never implemented in Ireland, you know. So that's it. Anybody else with questions? No?
I must mention there were 26 Royal Navy men of ours, and the Merchant Navy, we had 19, and they were only doing their job.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't sign up for anything. So to forget them as well for just doing their job, keeping the economy alive, trading.
And you have also 3 women in it, I think it's important to say as well.
Well, we have 4. We have one who was a nurse, Penelope McDermott. She was from Eastkey and she moved to America and she trained there, and she was working, she joined the military as a military nurse, and she succumbed to influenza and died. But she is recognised as a casualty of war, so that's why she's in it. But we also had 3 on the Leinster. The Leinster was the mail ship, Royal Mail ship that went down October 1918.
That's right.
So we had 6 civilians on that, and we had Emily Barlow. She was from Riverstown. We have a Mrs. Allen. Now, Mrs. Allen is she's hard to find anything about. So
not even her first name.
No, not even her first name. All the records state is that Mrs. Barlow, her body was handed over to her son from Cork. She was from Sligo, and that's all. Now, there is another query that it could be Mrs. Elam or something. You know, they may have got the spellings wrong or something. So, and then we'd Lizzie McGlynn from Pound Street, and that's where my Granda Mulligan was from. And she was heading over to train as a nurse in England with her friend, Nora. Nora was from Temple Boy, but she survived, so...
Okay, Simone, it's been a fascinating conversation, and congratulations. This is the book, bringing them home, Sligo's Great War Dead, 1914, 1918. Simone Hickey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'll now ask Steve for his second piece of music for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fascinating. Thank you very much for that. The first piece of music that I played earlier on about You Will Kill Your Brother was written by a Spanish poet called Javier Quiepo. He wrote the poem and we met together when I was working on a play. And in many ways, all wars are civil wars, I think.
Yeah.
This next song is a song, it's a poem by Francis Ledwidge, who was a beautiful, talented poet from Navan. And he made friends with Lord Dunsany, who fought with the Enniskillen Fusiliers, and he persuaded young Francis to join up. Francis went out and wrote beautiful poems from the First World War, and this one is a kind of a prescient poem because he wrote it 2 days before he himself was killed. All the dead kings came to me at Rosnaree, where I lay sleeping. A few stars glimmered in the dark, and down the bark the dew was creeping. And every dead king had a story of ancient glory sweetly told. And it was too early for the lark, the starry dark had streaks of gold. I listened to the sorrows three of Ireland sweetly told. A cock crowed from a hazel croft, and up aloft the larks were winging strong. And I too told the kings a story of ancient glory or Fort Sorrow. And there was a sound like moving shields, the high green fields, the lowland meadow. And one said, we who yet are kings have heard these things lamenting inly. Sweet music flowed from many a hill, and on the hill the moon stood queenly. And one said, over is the singing and the bell brow ringing from where we come. And with heavy hearts we'll walk the shadows. In the meadows the birds are dumb. And one said, since the poets perished and all they cherished along the way, their thoughts unsung like petal flowers inflame the hours of blue and grey. One said, a loud tramp of men will be heard again in Rosnaree, and a bomb burst where I lay. It was day in Picardy.
A good friend of mine, another one, Georgie Gorman, I'm sure everybody knows him. He is a songwriter, talented musician too, and a poet. And he has written a poem, and he wrote it for me last year for the official opening of the Great War Memorial Garden. And I'm delighted to say that Owen Spruill is going to read it here tonight. I have it in the book. It's a very, very moving poem, and it comes from the heart from Georgie. So this is Owen. It's called...
The trenches. The trenches are as cold as ice beneath a darkened sky. The bombs and bullets come in waves, then one by one we die. And I am only 18 years, a boy, not yet a man. I hide my fear, I dry my tears. with those who have been damned. The sound of men in fits of pain echo through the night. Their blood flows just like winter's rain from those who come to fight. We pray to God to send us peace, bring silence to this place. We pray the guns will someday cease and angels give us grace. But there among the blood that flows, the mayhem and the strife, in this place where nothing grows, a seed has taken life. And from the mud a flower blooms. Its beauty heals my heart, as cannons war in the night, taking men apart. And all around for all to see, a barren land that once was free. No bees, no birds to sing their song, no sound of life, these days are long. In dead of night we hear the cries of dying men, their moans, their sighs. These hands are cold, my heart is weak, my mind is broke, I cannot speak. Oh, how a man can kill a man by losing all control, then leave him here, his God, to meet and take his very soul. This air we breathe is full of gas as birds fall from the sky. I ask myself, what have we done? Beneath me, young men lie. And just like you, I was young, my life I was to live. All those songs I never sung, the love I had to give. Now here I am, as cold as ice, staring at the sky, waiting for the angel's arms to carry me on high. And those of you who see the sun when darkness turns to light, remember me and all that fell, those souls who came to fight. Then love the ground you walk upon, remembering my name, and love the very gift of life until we meet again.
Thank you to the Cathaoirleach, Councillor Bree, for your support this evening, to Simone and Ronan for a most respectful and enlightening discussion, thoroughly enjoyable by everybody here. We're grateful to Owen Sproul for reciting The Trenches, written by Georgie Gorman. Georgie couldn't be here this evening, and we extend our best wishes to Georgie. The beautiful music greatly enhanced the evening. Thank you to Steve Wickham for such stunning performances and for bringing such heart to your music choices. The next edition of The Word is on Wednesday, the 27th of November, Sligo Library in collaboration with the BA in Writing and Literature at ATU Sligo. Author and filmmaker Johnny Gogan will be here in conversation with Dr. Keith Hopper. But back to this evening, you'll have an opportunity shortly to purchase a signed copy of the book from Simone. Gur míle maithagah agus slán abhaile, but first, enjoy some final music with Steve Wickham. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. You know, the last time I was in the library here was about 3 years ago with your colleague from the Irish Times, Fergal Keane, was bringing out a book, and I remember it well because it was the beginning of the war in Ukraine, which that was nearly 3 years ago, nearly as long as the First World War in terms of time. I'd like to play a tune, a lament for all the soldiers who passed away, and for my own grandfather who fought in the First World War and came back, actually. He was in the Royal Dublin Fusiliers. His name was Joe Purcell.
Thank you.